Today, again, Australia's energy policy just gets sillier and sillier. Before our very eyes, we've got the example of Europe. The Eiffel Tower darkened at night to save power, showers limited, home heating turned down because of the Russian gas boycott. But Europe only has become energy dependent on the Russian dictator because the climate-driven rush to renewables has made Russian gas essential to keep the lights on when they don't have the wind and the sun isn't shining. With this living, breathing example of what not to do before our very eyes, you'd think, wouldn't you, that policymakers here would be grateful that 60% of our power still comes from reliable coal-fired power, especially as we have more coal than we could possibly use ourselves. But not in New South Wales. There, the Energy Minister, Treasurer as well, Matt Kean, has just claimed that the euro crisis proves not that we just have to maintain our own fossil fuel supplies and the power they generate, but in fact we've got to diversify ourselves away from fossil fuels as soon as possible. Today, Kean doubled down on his plans to make New South Wales largely coal-free within the next decade by calling for tenders to replace ageing coal-fired power stations with an electricity grid dominated by wind, solar and what he calls long-duration storage. Now, this long-duration storage might be batteries, it might be pumped hydro, or maybe, if technology proves feasible, so-called green hydrogen. Even though Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has dropped his pre-election claims that federal Labor's green schemes will cut power bills by $275 a year, given that East Coast power prices are tipped soon to rise by 20%, well, Matt Kean has doubled down, now claiming his latest green scheme will cut household power in New South Wales by $130 a year. Now, the utter implausibility of all of this green hype is obvious, even on the face of Kean's first tender. It's for 2,500 gigawatts of wind and solar, but just 600 megawatts of long-duration storage, which means that just 600 megawatts will always be there, which is about a quarter of the original capacity of the Liddell coal-fired power station that's due to close next year. So while we're copying the palpable failures of Europe, at the very same time, they should be here trying to crank up coal-fired power like they're doing in Europe now that they've lost their gas. That's not where we are. As Greg Sheridan points out in the Australian newspaper today, global coal use has never been higher. Last year, global coal-fired power jumped 8.5%. And never in human history, he writes, has more electricity been generated by coal. New South Wales Treasurer Matt Kean might like to think the world's turning away from coal because of fears it might wreck the planet. But it's coal royalties that are keeping his own budget afloat, thanks to record exports of thermal coal out of Newcastle. Total coal exports have just surpassed iron ore as Australia's biggest export earner. Our economy, well, the next biggest one in that, gas. As I often say in this debate, let's have a few facts and not all this green fiction.